Hi, I'm Bruce Rouse, and today I've got Graeme Harding with me from Becca. Graeme, it's very nice to have you here. And actually, just before we start with the 5 questions I said I'd ask you,
Yeah.
can you just tell me a little bit about Becca, what Becca does?
Oh, Becca is an engineering consultancy, and we work in a wide range of industries. So quite well known, I would say, in the food industry, but we're also very strong in pulp and paper, airports, water, and we do quite a lot of work in the mining space. BlueScope is a big mining and metals, but BlueScope is quite a big client of ours. We've done a lot of work at Nearstar in Port Perry. And currently, I'm actually working on quite a lot of renewables projects for St. Barbara Mining Group.
Great. So
So it's quite a broad range, yeah, which
you,
is part of the interest and fun of it.
yeah, you work in ports too. That's where I actually first came across you. Yeah.
I beg
Great.
your pardon, sorry?
I first came across you in your work with ports, with shipping ports, not so much
Yeah,
airports,
so
but shipping
exactly, we do
ports.
that. I don't even touch that, but we do
Yeah.
that a bit as well. So it's very broad.
Yeah.
And that, fortunately, for an engineering consultancy is quite good. My historical experience, I started in pulp and paper consultancy, and that was too focused. And then when the pulp and paper industry goes down, you really struggle. So we're at least quite broad now.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm sure it makes the work a lot more enjoyable too, because you can branch into lots of different areas. But let's get into what is it that you actually do?
So my job title is Senior Process Associate, and it has morphed a bit in recent years, more back into the sustainability space. But historically, I have worked as a process engineer doing design on a various size of jobs in industry. So I will do the process design, sort of more recent years, obviously just supervise P&ID development, process descriptions, functional descriptions, optimization of plants. And in more recent years, definitely more and more in the sustainability space, very specifically. And because of my background, I do a lot of the utilities work. So all of the steam, compressed air, refrigeration plants specifications, and really integrating that in our designs in terms of sustainability and how we're going to reach our targets. And that's where all the carbon emissions come from, is your utilities. So I'm, heavily involved in how we develop those designs to minimize energy use and run as efficiently as possible first, and then obviously figure out how to get green energy in on top of that.
Yeah, it sounds pretty challenging actually, doing all of that. I guess you need a lot of knowledge, a lot of technical knowledge, and then you've got all the other skills that you need, I guess, around, engaging with clients and being able to persuade them that your advice is worth following and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I guess through your career, you kind of grow into that. And I was fortunate when I started out in pulp and paper, which was heavy industry. I did a lot of detailed design works, big projects, and pulp and paper is very broad. So you get used to dealing with different processes each time. You've got lime kilns, you've got boilers, you've got pumps, you've got filters, everything. I did a gas turbine project, demineralization, all the different things that you come across in other industries are often there.
Yeah.
So it was a great foundation to do all that kind of design. And then over the years, I moved from that into energy efficiency. And this is kind of going on to one of your other questions I'm sure is coming, is I moved into, because of my background in South Africa, we had a power crisis in the country. And so I moved into running into a company that was specializing in energy saving projects, and we were getting funding from the government. So I moved into running the process side of a company that was specializing in energy efficiency. So they were doing huge amounts of lighting jobs, and they were getting a lot of government funding. So they would audit the site, count the lights, figure out how much you'd save, and guarantee it. And so that then they thought, well, there's an opportunity to do this on the process side. And I started, just with my process engineering background, knowing, you do heat recovery and you do pump sizing and pump modeling and variable speed drives. And that's really where I started. Like, it's quite a long time ago now, 15 plus years easily. And so that's all I started with, is the knowledge of process design and those basic principles. And I kind of started on a few projects in pulp and paper because that was my real core skill set. And then I did first big project I was starting with was a load shifting project on a river pumping station, pumping water up to the mill. And it was a really cool project because on top of load shifting, we actually saved power simultaneously. So normally on load shifting, you're just moving the load and you actually often use a bit more overall because your pumps have to run harder for shorter periods. And we modified the plant so we saved energy and we shifted load, like 1.5 or 2 megawatts through 2 periods of the day. And we won an award for that in South Africa. And then through that whole involvement of auditing plants and looking for energy savings, I started getting more into refrigeration a little bit. And first project started on floating head discharge pressure control, one of the classic things. And someone showed me a paper, hey, you can do this floating head discharge pressure control, and off you go, and you start figuring it out. And we did all that. And then you get into heat pumps. Did a lot of work with coke plants, replaced a coal-fired boiler, small coal-fired boiler. I was just doing their hot water with heat pumps and heat recovery off the refrigerant plant. Then I did an ammonia heat pump project, one of the first in the world at that stage, because South Africa was actually because we had this problem with no power, we were actually quite aggressive in the whole energy space. And so I did an ammonia heat pump project, replacing electrode boiler, reducing the load on an electrode boiler for hot water in a chicken abattoir. So I won an award for that project as well, mainly because it was just new and different. So we ran a 500 kilowatt ammonia heat pump off the end of a refrigerant plant and dealt with all of that. That was a fun little project. And so, I did a whole lot of other projects in various industries, pulp and paper, again, a few energy saving projects, pump variable speed drives, fan variable speed drives, control optimizations, etc., etc. And then I moved to Australia. And in Australia, I kind of hit a change in attitude, really. Initially, when I came here about 8 years ago, people were only talking about low-hanging fruit and find me something with a 2-year payback. And on energy, that's really difficult even now, although maybe the recent price increases might help that. But historically, it's been difficult. I actually started doing more basic process engineering again. Just, we've got a project, upgrade it. You're always trying to consider energy, but not so much energy auditing and master planning. And then in more recent years, again, we've moved back into, it's just changed so quickly, where all of our clients are saying to us, hey, we've got a target now. How do we get to that target? What are we going to do to our plant? What's the master plan? How do we achieve carbon neutral, 40% reduction by 2030, let's say, for example, and how are we going to get to carbon neutrality by 2050? And it's just a sea of change now where we're actually getting approached by long-term clients and saying, well, how do we get that? So I'm about to do a study for Norske Boyer in Tasmania, where years ago I put a TMP3 heat recovery project in, converting dirty steam to clean steam, 20 tons per hour heat recovery. And now we look at the entire plant steam balance, biomass boiler, or whatever we're going to do on the site, figure out the steam optimization, mechanical vapor recompression, who knows, doing that sort of work for bigger now, milk industry. And probably one of the more exciting jobs, which has recently happened, is I do a lot of work with St. Barbara Mining Group. We did a global audit of all their sites and how they're going to get to carbon neutrality, and which would be a pretty decent wind and solar project and cooling optimization strategy on their site in Leonora. And we've got a few tricks up our sleeve there, which we think are pretty special to make it cost effective. There's a whole long story.
Oh, it's fascinating, and I can really see how your early background has really helped you go forward. Yeah, having that detailed engineering understanding.
It's really important, and it gives you the confidence to not be scared of something new. I love something new. That's what being an engineer is about, is doing something new and different. And that's really what's so phenomenal about the space at the moment. We're going back to doing engineering again, whereas for a period, you'd put in a new plant, let's say it's a new bottling plant, and you just go to the main vendors and they go, oh, well, we need a bottling line, we need this, we need that, gas boiler, compressed air plant, refrigerant plant, blah, 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 and a few boxes. And you kind of didn't have the opportunity to really do much that was interesting. Now you've got to really think about how it all goes together, and integrating the heat recovery, and where do you put it and store it and balance it. And you're doing engineering, and none of those particular individual companies are actually looking at the big picture. So being an engineering consultant again is coming back into vogue, I would say. And it's just so exciting to do all that in design again. And the future is just such a wonderful opportunity for engineers now.
Oh, I'm loving your enthusiasm here, Graeme. It's fantastic. So moving on from that, let's look then at the big energy efficiency career opportunities over the next 10 years or so?
Mm.
Because you're saying, look, the future's engineering. So where do you think the specific opportunities are?
Well, we met at that energy efficiency conference, and even though, you and I should, be pretty aware of this, even me, I came out of that thing, just the scale of what we have to achieve in the next 10 years, 20 years is so phenomenal. And the number of engineers and skilled people we need is enormous. So I think you can throw a dart at it and you'll be needed. No one has enough people at the moment. And definitely skills in this space are going to be very important. So we need all of our young process engineers. We've got 30 engineers or something, younger process engineers. They are all normally quite keen on the space. And I believe the future is that actually it's going to be integrated into everything we do. I think you're going to be an engineer, but everyone's going to be a sustainability engineer, because it's just going to become part of the course of how you design. And so, initially the transition is, okay, you have an energy specialist and an energy auditor and an energy this, but everyone has to start thinking about it and do the design. But if you want to be more, if you really have a passion for it, then going into the consulting space is pretty cool, because you're dealing with all these different jobs and you're focusing on it each time. Whereas if you're in a plant, you're probably more involved in the day-to-day running and in the production side. Does that answer your question about where I think the opportunities are? I've really kind of
I think it really does. I really like the way how you said it. Well, there's opportunity everywhere, and it's kind of just becoming part of what you normally do in your role as as an engineer in any sort of discipline.
Yeah. So I mean, all of our young engineers are now sort of being trained in the space, and they're all having to think about it. And every time you do anything now, the justification for being more energy efficient or controlling it optimally is going to be there and become more and more critical. Whereas historically it was just, well, get it in, get it working, and there was just no means to justify doing anything more clever. And now I think it's going to swing, where people are going to start valuing every kilowatt hour, gigajoule of energy going forward. Because if you don't, you'll just be having to substitute it some other way.
Yeah. And I guess underpinning that then is back to your earlier skills. It's about understanding those fundamental thermodynamics and physics principles, engineering.
If we're honest, what you really are doing is just being an engineer and just kind of applying it to energy. And it's all pump modeling, heat balances, energy balances, mass and energy balances, it's thermodynamics, all this basic stuff we all studied, but now the numbers are adding up now to make it worthwhile really doing it properly, and insulation, all the things we as engineers learn.
Yeah. And going back to the engineering, not just putting boxes together.
Yeah. And that's what's so exciting now, is it's no longer a big vendor can just come and put it in a box and you connect the two boxes. And there was a period where engineering consulting kind of started to die. And it was just, balance of plant and project management. And we would just link up a whole lot of boxes. And, as an engineer who'd done detailed design, that was so frustrating for me. I can't stand that. I like doing actual design. And now it's swung back, where we are actually starting to think about it again. Well, how would I design this? And currently it's very exciting, because when you're doing a new project, no one's quite done it like that at the moment. Like, we're doing a project in Queensland now. It's a greenfield bottling plant, which has been announced, so I can sort of talk about it. And they've got some very aggressive carbon neutrality targets. They want to be almost carbon neutral from day one. And in their group, they haven't done it like we're doing it before. They haven't integrated it all. We've got a biomass hot water boiler. We've got optimized refridge. We've got everything. You're thinking about how much compressed air you're wasting. Is it worth getting heat from the compressed air plant once you've got a biomass boiler? How do I store it? How do I handle the load fluctuations? Good old-fashioned process engineering, what chemical engineers think they're going to do when they study and then discover. Some of us discovered it. You didn't always get that. Fortunately, I was quite lucky through my career pathway, but I think it's going to come back now for all of them.
Yeah. Great. So now a question that may be a little bit harder. What would your advice be to yourself, a younger you, in respect to a career related to sustainability and energy efficiency?
I guess when you look back on your career, you kind of realize that, I look back and I think I was actually quite lucky. I guess the main thing I would think about myself looking back is I was probably too scared to ask questions. And as you get more confident, and more experienced, I now find I'm in meetings and I'm not actually afraid to ask the question. And I think it's just that, don't be afraid. And sometimes some of the younger generation, I'm actually quite impressed with how confident they are, but some of them aren't, and they kind of sit there and they hesitate. Just ask the damn question.
Yeah.
Often someone hasn't thought about it, and you're just going to progress so much faster if you're not afraid to ask. And that would be my advice to me personally. If I'd asked questions more and admitted when I didn't know something, it just would have been so much faster.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as a dumb question, really.
No, there actually isn't. And you can see where the person, when they ask a question, you can often see the way they're thinking. And that's really what counts. It's not that, it's just they didn't know. Most things, once you know them, are actually easy, if we're honest. Most things, once you know the answer, it's actually simple. You just didn't know it. I had an interesting experience, slight sidetrack. A very senior guy, Becca, was talking to me about a plant at Neostar in Fort Perry, and he had this cadmium process. He was going to do cadmium recovery. It was really new to me, completely new, really interesting process, hydrogen, all sorts of things going on. And I had no idea, but he was talking me through the process. And I was just asking him questions about it, but he could tell from the way I was asking the questions that I actually had experience in, that they weren't stupid questions. It was just the way I was thinking. And that's really, it doesn't matter to ask the question, just ask.
Yeah.
And you'll move more quickly through everything, and you'll have a more productive meeting, because often, meetings are so much more productive when everyone just talks openly.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
Great. Fantastic advice. Excellent advice. So to wrap it up, because this has already been a very inspirational interview already, I feel, but what do you really love about what you do?
Look, I am passionate about the environmental side of it. I always tell, I run our green team at Becca nationally. I tell the younger engineers I'm a hippie at heart. Although I'm an engineer, I just have a very strong belief that what we need to do is save carbon, and we're in big trouble if we don't. So I love engineering, but I love applying the engineering towards a good end. And so, it's just a lovely combination where I get to do that more and more now. And finally, we are being asked to do it. Everyone's coming around to it. Not quickly enough, but
great.
It's happening at last.
That was really fantastic, Graeme. I really, really liked your enthusiasm, and I think your advice to a younger you was fantastic. I was thinking it could probably apply to all of us at any age, probably. Don't be shy about asking questions and admitting you don't know something. And the conversation progresses much further. That was great. Yeah, really good. Yeah. So, it's been a delight, actually. I love your enthusiasm for engineering. And
Oh, great. I'm glad it helped. I hope it helps someone.
Yeah, I hope so too. Terrific. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Graeme. Thanks very much.
See ya.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.